Welcome to Voices for Equality, an 11 Alive special, and you're now tuned in for the Women History Month edition. I'm your host, Naima Abdullahi. For the next half hour, we are honoring and celebrating generations of women who made their mark, impacting the culture and the history of Atlanta. These women are part of the fabric of what makes Atlanta, igniting change then and now. We start with a thought leader that you're already familiar with, no stranger to the ATL, Dr. Bernice King, a daughter of two civil rights icons. She sat down with me to talk about the unsung heroes. We're talking about the women of the movement. What can the history books do to honor Alberta King, Coretta Scott King, and the women of the movement from Diane Nash, Ella Baker, Rosa Parks, Fannie Lou Hamer, Septima Clark, Bernice Robinson.
The list can go
on and on.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's the women who aren't really given their flowers and how much change they helped create. Like, what can society do in honoring the women of the movement?
Well, I think it's what you just did. It starts with recognizing it, acknowledging it, and creating a space for it.
Yeah.
We're creating a space at the King Center soon that's going to be called Women's Soul of the Nation, so that when people come, they will see what these incredible women have done. We as women in particular have to insist on this and do it in our own circles of influence. But there are times when we have to find ways to coordinate and collaborate together to make a larger impact and impression. And I think we're at that season. We're in a window now, where people are paying attention.
Right.
And young people in particular. And many of them want to know more about who has contributed, to our world and to our nation and how. And so what can we do, again, collectively that has a larger impact for this next generation? Because I think it will give them the confidence and the guidance that they need, because I think that's very important that we missed. Very intelligent generation, but still needs some guidance as to how these women and men, were able to tackle so many difficult, challenging, painful, oppressive, exploitative, and damaging situations.
And still remained hopeful.
Hopeful.
Yeah, no, this young generation has a lot of heart. They may not have all the tools, but they have the drive to get there.
They do have the drive, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. As we look at those who put their minds and body and soul on the line for change to happen, let's talk about the Black Mecca and how it really laid the groundwork for the rest of the nation to catch on. What influence can Atlanta continue to have, not only as a Black Mecca that has been in a place and in a certain time period, but the epicenter and continue being the epicenter for change? My
suggestion is, if we're going to keep the Mecca and protect it from being destroyed, then we're going to have to do some serious, not just collaborating, but coordinating together.
Collaboration, coordination over competition.
Yes.
And kind of having that streamline. As we wrap up this conversation, I want to ask you, as a thought leader, as a global thought leader, as CEO of the King Center, what keeps you going when times get hard? Because your job ain't easy.
No, it's not, but you know what? I had the benefit of watching my mother go through so many seasons of difficulty and challenges. I know about things the public didn't know.
Right.
But I saw her hold her head up. I saw her pray. I saw her let love lead her in seasons where she could have, been filled with vengefulness and payback, because things have happened in this city that were very hurtful to her as a person. But she didn't let that stop her. She kept going. I look at our ancestors, and this is across the board culturally. We can look at all of our ancestors and see what they came through to get us here today, and know that we are made of them. We come from them. And if they could overcome, that's why we sing, "We shall overcome," because they overcame. So we too can overcome because we come from them. And then finally, the thing that my mother used to always say to me, she said, "Baby, the darkest hour is always before the dawn." Wow. And what she was reminding me is, it's dark, but dawn is coming. Now, you don't sit back and wait for it. We got to kind of usher it and push it and keep doing the work. But if you don't stop and you keep moving, it's going some kind of breakthrough that's good is going to happen. It may not be all that you want it to be. What they did in Montgomery wasn't everything. There was no Civil Rights Act that came from that. There was no Voting Rights Act that came from that. But it was a big start, and it boosted people's morale to a place that they were willing to make an even greater sacrifice, you know, to get us to those other things where we would have the Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, and Fair Housing Act. So that's what gives me hope. I mean, it gets bad. Sometimes I'm like scratching my head, like, how are we going to get out of this? I said, I don't know how. Right. But we as a humanity have gotten out of a lot of stuff.
We always figured out a way.
Doesn't mean that we're not going to lose people in the process. That's inevitable, invariable. As you get older, you begin to accept there's certain things in life you can't do anything about. That's why the serenity prayer helps. You know, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and give me the courage to change the things I can and the wisdom to know the difference. There's some things we can't change. Don't waste your energy there, because that's where you get exacerbated. But God give me the energy and the strength and the connections too, so that we can work together to change those things that we have the power to change.
And that's the beautiful legacy of Coretta Scott King. Now, Dr. Bernice King also says the impact of women should be celebrated and amplified year-round. We're talking 365. You can listen to my full interview with her at 11alive.com. When you think of the King family and the civil rights movement, of course, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. comes to mind, but he also credits another woman who was important to his life story, Alberta Williams King, for helping him become the influential leader that he was. That's his mother. Her contributions are deeply woven into the fabric of what makes Atlanta the city that it is today.
She was the First Lady of Ebenezer Baptist Church and the First Lady of her community. Alberta Williams King is a name deeply woven in the fabric of what makes Atlanta, Atlanta.
She was just a remarkable human being.
Her grandson, Martin Luther King III.
What is the untold story of Miss Alberta Williams King?
Gifted, loving, skilled.
And her granddaughter, Angela Ferris Watkins.
Alberta Williams King is one of the most important aspects of the modern civil rights movement.
Long before the King name became a household name in Atlanta, she was a queen in her own right.
There's no question. She was a remarkable human being. Literally, maybe who walked with kings and queens, but retained the common touch.
Her father, Adam Daniel Williams, was a pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church. When he passed away, her husband, Martin Luther King Sr., better known as Daddy King, began to lead the church. Dr. Maurice Hobson, African-American Studies professor at Georgia State University, says the King name has since become synonymous with Ebenezer's identity.
There's a long-standing tradition of Black women who are at the center for full-scale civil and human rights, and Mrs. King is absolutely one that should be considered.
How was she able to introduce history and the ugly side of history to her children in a way that gave them a motivation that a better day is possible, instead of feeling like this is the way it'll always be?
Her greatest task was developing her own children. She was one of the last people that Dad talked to before he was killed. My grandmother explained the vestiges of racism. This is the way it is today. We must work to make the world better.
There's a lot to say about the way that she explained the problem of Jim Crow laws and racism really made a difference.
Dr. King wrote letters to his mother, in one of the letters stating, quote, "I often tell the boys around the campus I have the best mother in the world."
Mrs. Alberta Williams King was a major component as to how Dr. King was able to really understand humanity.
As a devoted wife, mother, and church member, she was the glue for Ebenezer Baptist Church. She was college educated, leading the choir, playing the church organ, and serving as a proud member of the NAACP and several organizations that focused on social justice.
Can you imagine a mother watching her son put his life on the line for the good of humanity.
Why do you think women in the civil rights movement got overshadowed?
There's a new shift in the paradigm of how we understand the field that really does focus on women. It focuses on coming from the bottom up.
Her last moment alive was in the same church she grew up and raised her children in 6 years after the murder of her son. June 30th, 1974, Alberta Williams King was shot while she played the organ during a Sunday service inside her safe haven. The man responsible was later arrested.
She was playing, ironically, the Lord's Prayer when she was killed.
47 years after her death, and now a yearning desire to not gloss over her legacy so the world never forgets the First Lady of Ebenezer, the centerpiece of Sweet Auburn.
This story could be inspiring. This story of who Alberta Williams King was, and what she represented to her family and to the community.
Up next on Voices for Equality, women working behind the scenes during the civil rights movement.
When you're in the struggle for equality, there's no such thing as a role. You do whatever has to be done.
How the legend Xernona Clayton opened doors for generations of women. Welcome back. The contribution of women during the civil rights movement behind the scenes made all the difference and did not go unnoticed. Xernona Clayton is one of those women. She spent her career paving the way for others to fight for human rights, and she says she's not done just yet.
The civil rights movement meant my life, my world, my hope.
It's a hope Xernona Clayton has been able to watch manifest over many decades. A hope she helped create when she moved to Atlanta in 1965. And just like most women of the movement, she wore many hats.
And one thing you find that when you're in the struggle for equality, there's no such thing as a role. You do whatever has to be done.
But you didn't see her or many other women of the movement on the front lines for a reason.
Dr. King really didn't want us as women to be on the firing line in those awful marches.
The women worked out the logistics.
If they were hurt, we got to fix them up. If they go to jail, we got to get the money to get them out of jail.
Even raising money for the movement by going on tours across the South and putting on concerts, developing her lifelong friendship with Coretta Scott King.
That friendship did a lot for me and my relationship with Dr. King and the movement.
Her most prominent role yet came in 1967 when she became the South's first African American to host her own primetime show here in Atlanta.
But I really had on my mind all the time that I've got to be good, because this is going to be an example. Opening the door was the feeling I still have today.
She continues to open doors for her community today while putting their accomplishments on display through her foundation and her annual Trumpet Awards show.
It propels me to do the next good, that I don't run away from people who are in need.
And her words to the next generation of freedom fighters.
Do as much as you can, as often as you can, but never sit on your can.
And now the icon Xernona Clayton is honored with an 8-foot statue located in downtown Atlanta. It will serve as a special reminder of all her contributions over the years. Still ahead, Voices for Equality, women preserving the history and culture of Atlanta.
There's a story that we're telling that people want to hear. We're speaking to a lot of people.
One woman is helping preserve and celebrate that history, the impact of the music on the city's culture. Welcome back. As we honor and celebrate the moments and the movements that made Atlanta what it is today, one woman is working to preserve the legacy of the music in real time for this generation. We sat down with Adela Halim, the art curator of the iconic Trap Music Museum. What's the big picture story of the Trap Music Museum? You know, what is it really saying about Atlanta?
Atlanta's like a art art renaissance right now. You know, Black art is so important right now. We're documenting history. You know, Atlanta is so important to the culture.
When you see the lines wrap around the corner, dozens of people, hundreds of people waiting in line to get a glimpse of that history that you're speaking of. How does that feel?
I think what it really means is that there's a story that we're telling that people want to hear. We're speaking to a lot of people through what we do and what we've created. Trap Music Museum, we were the first of its kind.
For other Black creatives who may not look at their own story as of value, of telling it, of showcasing it, what message do you have for them?
Art heals, you know what I mean? Like journalism, music, right, all of it. It is a way of expression, and it is an art form, and to be able to express that creatively is a way for us to just tell our own narrative, to put it out there and then grow and heal from it.
We also sat down with Atlanta hip-hop artist T.I. about the iconic landmark which he owns. You can find the full interview on our website, 11alive.com. We'll be right back with more on Voices for Equality. Traditions are also a big part of what makes the culture what it is today. One of those traditions is making a big comeback. A group of Georgia women over 40 is keeping their childhood love of double Dutch alive. Savannah Levins has their story.
Come on, Queens, let's make it happen.
If you think fun and games are for the young,
that's it, let's go.
You might be right. But if you think being young is about age,
where y'all swag?
You couldn't be more wrong.
40 Plus Double Dutch Club exists to empower women. It allows you as a woman over 40 to stay in shape.
Get them heart rates up. Although it's exercise, you don't look at it as exercise because you're having so much fun.
Ages proudly displayed on their matching tees, these ladies are stepping between the double Dutch ropes.
Let's get all four of y'all in.
And back into their childhood.
In the summer times, I would go to New York and we would jump double Dutch in the street till the lights come on. It's always been a culture thing for little Black girls. That's what we did in our community for fun.
Jack be nimble.
It's an inexpensive sport, right? So that is a clear connection to the Black community. So we had to go with what we had to make it fun for ourselves. We actually used the clothesline for rope. It brought all of us together.
Double Dutch took off during the Great Depression, a common sight in Black communities across the nation. By 1973, it became an official competitive sport and a major influence on the rise of hip-hop.
As a kid, we didn't have a lot of toys, and a rope was like our rope. I'm from Argyle Gardens in Chicago, so the rope was like pretty much the toy that we had, so that's what we did, and it's like a heritage thing.
You better work it, girl. Hey, hey.
Their friends, moms, grandmothers.
Let's go, ladies.
But on Double Dutch Day,
good job.
There are those little girls again.
It's just like riding a bike. I said, I haven't jumped in about 40 or 50 years. I'll try it. Got in there and just did my thing, and it just came back to me just like that.
Just like that.
We are culture. We are Black culture.
A pastime makes a comeback.
It has gone past sisterhood. We have gone to being a movement.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
And childhood memories become a grown-up's renewed love.
We're gonna keep this movement going even when we're gone.
The 40 Plus Double Dutch group started with 7 women in Chicago and now has over 40,000 members and more than 100 clubs across the world, including 4 right here in the Atlanta area. Thank you so much for watching this edition of Voices for Equality.